A very good evening to all of you. Now we present you with the panel discussion on Publishers Corner using esports for in-game engagement and purchasing. Welcome to our moderator Tejraj Bharat, AVP Head Reliance Jio Infocom. Welcome to our panelists Sukamal Pegu, Head of Publishing India and South Asia, Riot Games; Gaurav Agarwal, Co-founder GamesUp; Dibyo Jyoti Manak, Vice President for Policy and Legal, Mobile Premier League. Audience, you may post your questions for our panel in the chat box. Now over to you, Mr. Bharat.
Thank you so much, and good evening, everybody. Today, we are discussing basically what has been like an elephant in the room in India. We've got lots of players, we've got lots of games from India and abroad. But as far as the developers and publishers are concerned, especially the smaller ones, the issue always is how do I monetize? And while esports has been a relatively recent phenomenon, even across the world, what we as a group of industry folk think is that the developer community in India, originating from India, and publishers in India could do with a little bit of a chat among us, where we can discuss ideas about what really it means to be in esports in India, especially given what Dibujyoti or Gaurav today called in a different discussion as a mobile first market. How do we use esports for engaging users, and then eventually how do we use esports to drive something like an in-app purchase also? And but first, I would invite you on how all three of the co-panelists, Sukamal, Gaurav, and Dibijyoti, think what they define as esports in their own context, because we have three industry leaders from three different kinds of game developers stroke publishers. Would count Divijyoti, you and MPL more as publishers rather than just developers. So I would invite each one of you to offer your views as to what you view as esports, and whether you think differently in the Indian context, especially for Sukamal Pegu. This is the question. So I think we'll start with Sukamal.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pura. Tejraj, and like Dibajit and Gaurav as well. Pleasure to to have to talk to you again online. We already had a backroom chat. All right, so I think it's a fantastic question, right? So from a Riot Games perspective, we are a traditional. Let's say now we are traditional. So now I think people like Dibyajuti and Gaurav are doing more cutting edge in terms of the mobile platform, but we are a more traditional esport view. Very traditional view in terms of what esport is, which is basically the competitive part, right? So just a brief background on what Riot Games is. So we are the publishers and developers of esport titles like League of Legends and Valorant, right? Valorant has been the success story for us in India for PC, and we launched it this year, and we have seen a lot of growth both in terms of volume and value in terms as well, right? So Valorant is a 5 versus 5 PC shooter. So whoever has played Counter-Strike school days, college days, or even now, will understand that Valorant is basically let's say our take on what a competitive shooter is, right? And for us, this is a very traditional competitive game. And when we say esports, it is how do we showcase this to the world, right? And for us, for us, esports traditionally has not been the focus as a business, but more of, let's say, how do we use esports as a marketing tool for giving viewers not just the experience of competitive gaming, but also let them see what levels they can go to, right? So from us, we are very traditional in terms of what esport is. So whatever you see around League of Legends or around Valorant PC tournament organizers doing a broadcast around it. So from our perspective, that is esports, but I'd be very interested to see or hear what Dibujiti and Gaurav take on esports as well, because I think fundamentally what we would like to discuss moving on is to basically how do we address some of the fundamental pillars of what esports needs, which is going to be common across no matter what we do or what we view as esports, but we will be building on the same fundamental blocks that we need for this ecosystem to survive, to not just like thrive, but also to grow, right? So this is the right take on it. But I would be very interested to hear what Divyajyoti and Gaurav also and their take on esports.
Thank you so much. Divyajyoti, like to go first now?
Yeah, why not? Sure. And so, Kamal, thank you so much for opening the discussion, and and for that for your thoughts. I think, and thank you so much to IMAI for having me here and for having this conversation. Yes, I think esports is a dynamic is a very dynamic industry and a dynamic concept. I mean, I mean, in no other form of real life or physical gaming or physical sport do you have a situation where the sport itself changes form every maybe few years, right? And that's like cricket is the same, roughly the same that it was even 200 years back, right? There have been a few new formats, but it's the same game that has continued from how we understand it. When it comes to esports, we have new games making the cut, every year now, right? And the games, I'm sure the Asian Games in 2018, the games that they had, and the next one, whenever it happens, the games that will have, I'm sure there might be some differences in the games there too. So I think that's a fundamental part about esports that is very interesting to us at FPL, at least. How it develops and how it changes color every so often, right? And that's pretty interesting for us. And the second thing that I was mentioning to Tejraj and Gaurav earlier was that the more South Asian or Southeast Asian format of esports is probably going to be mobile first. Because as I was telling these guys that the internet came to these places and not through traditional PC or not through the iPad or any other device, which means that any form of online sport must cater to the mobile phone audience as well, and might need to cater to them a little bit more in some of these jurisdictions, right? That is not to take away from the amazing, I love playing a lot of PC games myself, and that's not to take away from all those games at all. But I'm just saying that there is a sector of people who are getting onto the internet using smartphones, and it's about time we start catering to them as well. And that's my sort of preliminary thoughts on where and how we see sports and how we see it change and how we think it develops.
Yeah.
Gaurav?
Yeah, I think so. First of all, I would say that the fact that companies like Riot existed and have existed for long, and they've in many ways brought the concept of esports around. And with mobile, the only thing that I think mobile first companies are trying to do is to de-elitize what could otherwise have been restricted to a select few, who had the gear, who had the wherewithal to participate in those kind of sports, right? So at GamesOp, and we are an HTML5 based game publishing company. Our users can play our games competitively or casually. We think the idea of sports in gaming, so esports, needs to be broadened because that's how any industry will thrive. When things are introduced for the first time, it is always restricted to a select elite few, the intelligentsia. The example of cricket was being brought up, and all of us know that cricket was restricted to, even within the colonizers, it was restricted to a select few generals, and then slowly and suddenly started to gain mass, right? So I think it's only natural. What we are seeing in esports is nothing unusual. It's only natural for sports of any kind, of entertainment of any kind, to broaden and to reach masses. And I think that's exactly what mobile esports today is all about.
Absolutely. And I think just to add to, I think the whole conversation is basically like, forget about what platform or whatever, right? So I think since we are all interested in the South Asian market, so we have to be cognizant about a couple of things, right? First of all, that whatever we say esports, doesn't matter what defined definition we have. So we have to look at what makes sense for our region, right? First of all, access, right? Second thing is content. Third thing is platform, and fourth thing is entertainment. I think these are the four blocks which we can apply multiple layers and create esports products, right? And this is what I think should be the tone for our discussion, and see how can we address each of these aspects and make it more meaningful for local esport products, right? So like IPL is a homegrown property, right? So cricket is the content, but the whole packaging around is called IPL, right? So we have test match, we have one day, but then we have just one IPL, right? So this is, I think, where we need to move to. I mean, like, at the end of the day, IPL hits all parts of checklists for the four things that I've mentioned, right? And this is where they have been able to transfer something from sport, which is, let's say, limited to a specific set of people, and now made it mainstream. And I think this is the goal that I'm sure, like, with MPL or with Gaurav's, like, startup, everything is all focused about how do we take the concept of making people play games competitively, doesn't matter what game on what platform, is to have some meaningful experiences which can also help developers and, like, platforms, and also at the end of the day, players, like, get benefits out of it monetarily or entertainment or whatever it might be the case. I think this would be something which all of us would agree on, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, absolutely. One point there, Gaurav, you mentioned that your primary this thing is hyper casual or HTML5 games. Now, one of the questions that comes to my mind is there's a lot of developers in India who make this kind of games. Okay, maybe small outfits. Is there something they should do to use esports among these casual, because there's a lot of hyper casual and casual gamers in India. Okay, while there are people who play League of Legends or any of the more competitive games on the PCs or even consoles, there's a lot of people who play, and that might help expand the market also. So I just wanted to ask you guys if there's any ideas which can esports related ideas that you have or you've been thinking about or you would advise people to follow in order to take benefits of esports as a monetization mechanism to drive either engagement which leads to ad revenues nonetheless in those games, or to drive in-game purchases.
Yeah. No, I think that goes without saying, and I think this is the situation at hand, that there are a lot of small outfits in India, there are a lot of talented game development studios in India that are coming up with titles that we like to see. So I think for the developer, esports is something that they should view as a monetization mechanism. Let's see what are the options at hand, right, for any developer. If a developer is making a casual game, let's assume that they've made it on HTML5, or even if they've made a native game, they either push it to the app stores, both the Play Store and the App Store, then they either make revenue from ads or from in-app purchases. But in esports, especially in the Indian context, if you throw money into the equation on skill-based games, then what you get is a third method of monetization, where not only can you avoid showing ads to the users, not only do the users not have to pay for in-game purchases, but they pay an entry fee to participate in a game of skill. Say a game like chess or Sudoku, or it could be crossword, whatever it is, as long as it's a game of skill and within the laws of the land, if you introduce an element of money, then the developer is the one who, in many ways, or the platform is the one that is collecting the money on behalf of the participants. They pass on a majority of the portion to the winner. So let's assume if Tejraj and I are participating in a game, we put in 10 rupees each, and Tejraj stands to win the game, then maybe Tejraj walks away with 16 rupees, and 4 rupees is is on the distribution side, is for the distribution side to keep. Now that could be between the developer, if the developer and the platform is one and the same, or that could be shared between the developer and the platform if the developer's only job is to create the game, and a platform like GameStop or Mobile Premier League is hosting those games for users to come and participate on. So definitely, I think if you have done the hard work, if you have developed the game, if you have pushed it out on the Play Stores, then you should definitely work with platforms like ourselves to give your games more wing, right? Because most of the platforms that are out there promoting esports, they've already gathered good user base. And for the developer, it's about plugging into the ecosystem of any of these platforms and then ensuring that their game reaches a wide number of people. And you get the added benefit of a monetization layer that's otherwise absent from the Play Store or the App Store, or at least the Play Store structure.
Dibijyoti, you have any thoughts on this? You are at the forefront actually of what Gaurav was just speaking about. charging the user directly. But you also have a model where I guess the user is not charged, but the sponsor pays for that user to play.
Absolutely. So there are multiple models. I see this as very similar to owning an online or an e-stadium, right? Gaurav, what GameStop has, was MPL has. What we have is basically a set of e-stadiums where we host tournaments in different games, right? Which are all skill games, as you mentioned. So there could be anything from chess to archery, pool, carom, Sudoku, you name it, right? Now, to play these tournaments, it's possible that, if for example, somebody like Virat Kohli comes to play a tournament, obviously you're not going to charge him anything, and obviously you're going to find large, big sponsors to come and sponsor those tournaments, and they will come. And you'll be able to give large man of the match prizes, man of the series prizes. And we've got so many prizes now, right? So all of that will happen, and that happens when you attract that kind of a player, and you attract like big esport players coming on your platform and playing in big tournaments. You will have sponsors. But what happens when you don't get that, right? What happens if it's me and my guys in my mohalla or like people around me and we want to play a small scale tournament? Now, I'm not going to be able to find sponsors for that, right? So it's be difficult for me to find the sponsors at IPL, for example. Right? So we are not going to be able to do that. So what do you do there, right? How do you monetize there? So what we typically do is to say that if you want to use my stadium for hosting this tournament, or if you want to host that tournament for you in that game, well, we're going to charge you a registration fee for the same, right? So you pay that registration fee. We'll host you the tournament. We'll give you state of the art, mechanics. We will make sure that the tournaments are protected from fraud. We'll make sure that there's seamless transfer of money. We'll do all the work for you. We're going to charge you a fee for it. And that's a registration fee. Now, a part of that obviously will be kept for all these operational costs that I was talking about, and obviously a little bit of revenue. A part of that will also go to the developer of the game if you're on MPL or GameStop, I guess, for that matter. And the rest of it will be invested back into the ecosystem as rewards, scholarships, prizes, awards, as more tournaments and the works, right? So I think that is a potential model that has thankfully worked for us and for a few others. I think it makes a lot of sense for developers because they have something that makes revenue for them from day one, and it makes everybody else's job also much easier. You don't always have to search for sponsors. You don't always have to rely on getting a few very big players to play in your tournaments, and you have a lot more localized and hyper localized tournaments. I can have a tournament for just my family, and so on and so forth. So I think that's something that we're trying to unlock with MPL.
Okay. So I guess what you and Gaurav have driven home, the point that you have driven home is that if you have a big enough set of people, then it makes sense for a developer or an esports platform organizer to talk about charging a sponsor. But if there is no sponsor, then the only model that can succeed is by users pooling in their resources, and then the winner getting something out of it. Sukamal, I think you've been working on a very different take as far as esports is concerned. So I would, if you have a contrarian view, I would invite you here. Or looking at India, if you are developing a different view on a market like India, where the scales are difficult, skilled gaming is on a relatively smaller scale. There is not probably enough hardcore gamers, although everybody keeps saying they are there. Is there a different take that you have on the Indian market? You have more of
Yeah,
a global and outsider view, so your views are very important to us.
absolutely. And I think like both Dibyajit and Gaurav have hit the point saying like, that what has really contributed to the success for platforms like MPL is the fact that they're able to target like not just local, hyper local, plus the ability like they're able to bring a platform to developers, especially the indie developers who are not being able to like either get let's say viewers for their games or the ability to monetize even if they have a good game, right? So fundamentally I think that is the need that has been fulfilled, right? For us at Riot Games, I mean, like, of course, our games are competitive by nature. I mean, like, that is the way that we approach gaming. And yes, our games are built for the more traditional form of esports. And yes, as big publishers, are we interested in India and what is our lens? Our lens is very simple, right? So we are cognizant of the fact that there are the good thing about India is that the size of the market is huge, right? And that has definitely means that there is enough space for all sorts of esports that can what you call coexist with each other, right? There is no way of saying this is the only way to do this or this is a wrong way for to do this, right? For us, when we launched Valorant for PC in India, that was the viewpoint, right? Hey, you need to come out with a mobile product. I mean, like, no, there is no way that people are going to play a PC game and like pay for your, let's say, game, like pay for your items inside. But we went ahead knowing that, like, we believe in the product itself, which is very important for all the developers and people who are looking to build games. Is to no matter what platform you have, you cannot be successful unless and until you have a great product. And that is the fundamental thing that I think everybody should focus on, saying, yes, there are platforms which can help me monetize, or there are platforms which can give me access to people who can play my game, but my product has to really stick, right? I mean, I'm sure if you look at MPL, the games that do really well for them over a period of time are the games which are built with, let's say, a lot of thought, right? They are not the games which yes, you might get one day spike when you launch the game, but after that, there are no people who are interested to even participate in a free tournament, because for them it's like simply not worth or not interesting enough. And that is where I think our hypothesis about India is simple, right? We are aware that this has a huge mobile population, and there are multiple ways to experience esports. We are coming to India with a strong suite of products which are competitive by nature, and there are products which can stand on their own, whether we do them as a standalone title or we do them as esports. Esports for us has helped spreading the awareness and also helped, like, for example, for our sales, for example, our games have in-app sales, which are basically skins for your guns. They don't help you to have a better skill at your gameplay, but more as, let's say, something which you can buy a skin for your gun. What the esport has done for us, I mean, just a little side note, is that it has enabled people to take back a little bit of the experience, which is very personal for them. When they watch very good players playing the game and they see what kind of items they're using or what kind of skins they have for their guns, and it's just an aspiration part of it, right? So it's the aspiration to own that part of that hero journey that their heroes had inside the game. Also helps us drive a little bit of our sales as well. And I think this is something which a lot of indie developers can also take note of, saying hey, why don't you use platforms like MPL to give an experience which is not part of your, let's say, your free or basic experience for the game, right? Is there a possibility for me to use this platform to say, if you play this tournament, you get to experience a part of the product which is not available, but you can do this by playing the game. And maybe later, if you really like it, maybe you should go and acquire it for your normal game as well. And I think this is a very smart way of looking at saying, how do I make these platforms work for me, right? Rather than just going and being on the platform and hoping that that tomorrow my fortunes will change and that I'll have a lot of players. But you need to look at these platforms as enablers. They're enabling you to an audience which might not have played your game or might not have spent money on your game, but now you have a platform where you are able to unlock an experience which gives them a taste of what happens if they are able to invest more in your game, right? And this is something which I would definitely encourage a lot of developers to think about it as well. And instead of just focusing on saying, hey, how do we make more money, to say, hey, can we look at our product and see, is it a product that our players would love to play, or is it a product that can be more competitive on MPL or any other platform, so that when they go back, they say, hey, it was a great game. I want to have that piece of that product which is not available. Maybe I'm going to spend a little to acquire that as well. So that would be my take on on the Riot's take on how we look at this market. A lot of headroom, a lot of different ways for esports to coexist. And like I said, this is just the beginning. And over the next 2 years, you'll see way more experimentation, not just from others, but from ours as well. So we are also exploring a lot of ways by which we can enable a lot of, let's say, esports in this region, which might not be more traditional, but more experimentative. And that is where we are super excited to see what's happening. And considering the fact that in 2021, we will have mobile titles, the big titles, we are coming with our big guns. And hopefully, absolutely. Mobile, we cannot, there's no way you can escape mobile in India, right? And hopefully, that when our mobile titles are ready for launch, we should have a very interesting take on saying how can we do or how can we enable esports in India, which has not been done before, but there are now partners and platforms which we can explore as well. So this is super exciting time for us.
So so very interesting take. All three of you actually, very different views, and good to know that Riot's going to be there on mobile also next year. So Kamal, uh, see, one thing that comes to my mind is, while we all keep saying that this is a mobile first and this is a potential market for esports, is there a reason why the guys who made it big in India, for example, Garena is doing very well in India. We know that PUBG did very well, but um, I mean, they themselves haven't been doing too much of esports tournamenting in India as of now. Okay, and let's agree they are mobile first titles, right? Uh, so, what do you think has been the reason, or is it that it's just that they've not noticed it? I mean, it's these guys are not here in the room, so to speak. But is there a reason why the big guys haven't gone into esports first off, or were they waiting in the wings for something else to happen?
Yeah, maybe I'll take a quick shot at it. So basically, like okay, let's look at it from the lens of let's say traditional esports, where you have, let's say, the like the League of Legends World Championships, or maybe it's Counter the CS:GO, worlds events, right? So big events. So let's look at it from that lens, right? So from a big publisher, that's the pyramid. The players are like a pyramid, right? So on the base, you will have maybe 90% of your player base are going to form the lower base of the pyramid, which is going to be playing your game. And then there will be a middle section of people who are playing it competitively. And then the top 1% or maybe less than 1% are people who are so good that they are going to be e-athletes, like I said, right? That's from a very traditional, let's say, esports perspective. For a big publisher to get into a market like India and start saying, okay, we're going to do esports, that's not going to happen on day one, even for us, right? So for us, this year has been to enable grassroots. So saying, hey, let's build the two pillars which forms the base, right? And once we have been able to identify the top 1% of the population or the player base, which are, let's say, truly world class, and that is when esports get unlocked from a publisher's perspective, right? So I think that is the reason why a lot of tournament and second thing is also India has a very, very, very strong grassroots tournament organization infrastructure, right? So if you look at the grassroots organizers, just so many of them. A very classic case would be like PUBG, right? So PUBG, when it was at its peak, you had tournament organizers in every corner of the country, right? And they helped really build up that ecosystem, which led to the top 1%, because of which PUBG as a publisher was able to unlock esports from a first party perspective, right? Where they themselves do the events, right? And I think this is something which is going to happen. And from a Riot's perspective, usually that happens maybe 1.5 years after a market has been activated, right? So for 1.5 years, it is allowed to cook in the grassroots scenes, where you have partners taking up the game and running it as grassroots events through their network, and slowly building up that pool of players, where you can identify that these are the 1% of the gamer base who people would love to watch them play, right? And that is the game changer for us, right? So when you have, let's say, same structure as cricket, right? You have a school level cricket, then you have a district level cricket, then you have a state level, then you have national, and then you have finally an international level, right? So first party publishers, when they get into esports, they usually control mostly the international and the national narrative, whereas everything else is allowed to be grown through partners, and that is what exactly even Garena does as well, right? I cannot say for sure, but my suspicion is that that is the strategy from most big publishers when they come to India, right? So they let the grassroots grow on its own, and when the 1% of the population or the gamer base has been identified, who people would love to watch competitively, is when first party titles get unlocked for the region, right? And that is the way things work. And I think for mobile, platforms like MPL and all the other tournament organizers, they're doing a great job to unlock the grassroots part so that people are trying it games, people are enjoying games, people are like staying engaged and becoming better. I mean, like what you did in the last tournament probably will not get you the win in this tournament. You have to level up. And that is a natural transition. And for every publisher, once you have the cream de la cream of athletes who are so good that people would love to watch, come and actually come to an e-stadium per se to watch them play, is when you have first party titles or first party esports unlocked from the publisher.
So, are we saying now? This is a question for both Gaurav and Dipijoti. Are we saying that people who play hyper casual or casual, or then maybe what you call as mid-core gamers, they are the ones who are going to end up graduating to the more serious games? You, Dipijoti, especially you, would you see gamers who are playing on the MPL platform, which are mainly casual games? Would they expect something sort of higher in the next 1 or 2 years, saying that okay, now I'm bored with this, I don't want to play this casual game anymore, I want to move on to doing something else? Have you already seen that happening with your game sometime?
Uh, yeah, absolutely. Let me answer that in I think 2 or 3 parts to that answer. First, I think Sukam is absolutely correct about the pyramidal structure of gamers particularly. I agree with him completely that there are multiple ways to skin the cat when it comes to India, but the core part is going to be how good at the end of the day the product is, how much the user or the different players, how much they enjoy playing, and how much they like everything that comes with it. I think I would take from what he said in the beginning when he talked about essentially talked about the ability to watch people play, right? And he said that's a very important part of being esports. And I think that's an experiment, honestly, that we are very interested in seeing how it develops. We want to understand. I don't think there has been many platforms which have given meaningful ability for players to stream themselves while playing what is traditionally understood as casual games, right? And I don't know because it's a little bit. I mean, I don't know if people wouldn't like to watch other people play fruit chop. Is it just that it's not been tried before? And we'll be very happy to try that out. So we are doing things that will help us try that out and really see how the audience reacts to that. So that'll be very interesting. I do think that leveling up is something that's necessary. We have seen that statistically, even internally, where we've seen that players who play for much, who play repeatedly tend to perform better than players who are not doing that. We have also seen that, that you need to consistently learn more. So, for example, when we started audio shows and videos, we started seeing a lot of videos popping up by players on how to make you a better player at a particular game, and that was knowledge that people were seeking out actively. So I think yes, there are people who are willing to learn how to play better. I think there's a little bit of a competitive spirit in most human beings, and I think that's something that comes to the fore when you come on to any platform and when you try out all those very interesting things that the indie developers pump out all the time.
Okay, I guess Divijoti, MPL will end up, as you call it, cooking up some players at least for you. That's what I think it would be. Right.
We
We
hope
hope
so.
so.
We hope so. Honestly, I think the players make us what we are. We are, as I said, MPL is like an empty shell without developers on one side and players on the other. So I think yeah, we are hoping for that we get some really good players from there. We've already got some really great developers. We're going to get more.
Okay. Uh, Gaurav, how do you see this coming up? The same question to you, what Divijoti was answering just now. Would the really hyper casual HTML5 gamer move on to play something else? Or in my time, and my time go back like 15, 20 years. So what I've seen is people would start playing games. This is probably 10 years back, I'm talking about, or 20 years back. Now everybody's got a mobile phone. But in those times, you used to go to a cyber cafe and play Counter Strike with some 10, 15 of your friends, scream a lot and all of that. But once you were in college and you were about to graduate and all that, you almost quit gaming, right? Now with mobile phones in your hands and internet connectivity, high quality gaming, good quality devices on the cheap, do these hyper casual gamers graduate to something else? or do they also over a period of time get fatigued or get busy with something and then they just quit? And how does a game developer who's attending this conference, who's looking for some advice on what kind of lifespans, etc., can one look when it comes specifically to this kind of games, hyper casual games? Do they leave and move on to something more complex, or they just leave gaming altogether? How does that work?
Right. So I'll answer that question at 2 or 3 levels, and I'm talking very statistically with facts, because over 40 million users play on GameStop every month, and this is not a registered user base. This is the number of users who actually engage with the platform every month, right?
Very
Uh,
good.
and these are users who come from very diverse backgrounds, and unlike Mobile Premier League that spends money to acquire users, or that pushes its own product, we actually power gaming or esports inside other products. There are about 2000 odd applications and websites within which we power a layer of gaming. So I think the main question here is the ability of the platform itself, right? The GameStop platform is segmented in 10 different categories for users as they upskill, right? So as the users get more skilled, our platform, the look and feel of the platform, the games that we offer to our users, they change entirely. We have an internal segmentation strategy that if somebody spent up to 1 hour on the platform is going to look a certain way for that user, because it's likely that gamer is coming from a certain expectation that he would have probably heard about games up from somebody else, or he stumbled upon the platform as he was exploring a product. As he transitions into a more experienced gamer, we show different games to the user, and with our RMG product, we gain even more ability with the kind of discounts that we are extending, with the kind of vouchers that we are opening to the user, and so on and so forth. So I think the platform needs to play a very important role. Sure, the user is graduating, but can the platform also graduate alongside the user and help him into transitioning into something more interesting, right? So I think the platform needs to totally evolve. That's one part that is super important. The second thing is, now Sukamal clearly established that India is a large market, and you can't ignore this market, right? I think the segment that sometimes we forget is, how do you make the non-gamer a casual gamer, right? Can you make the non-gamer a casual gamer? That is, I think, if any of us are able to solve that equation, we'll probably have the biggest jackpot in our hands, right? And that's where GameStop tries to position itself. We power gaming inside news applications. We power gaming inside e-commerce applications. We power gaming inside applications like OK Credit, which businessmen use for managing transactions, right? Because we think those are the places which have traffic. Those are the areas where we think users will have some time to spend. Those are places that users are already coming to on a regular basis. Can you also add gaming inside a non-gaming product and pass on a portion of what you earn to that non-gaming product? You'd
So
find
basically,
that.
sorry, I'm just breaking in here, Gaurav. You're basically saying that non-gaming, non-games platforms, non-gaming and non-games means something that has nothing to do with gaming, also can be treated as a distribution partner, marketing partner, or even for analytics. So tomorrow, if you go to Amazon or a Flipkart's been getting into gaming anyway.
Yeah.
They'll have a lot of analytics on customers, what their spend capability is, what is the time at which they're on the platform, off the platform, etc., etc. And then you're basically saying that one should, from a distribution point of view, uh, this may not be exactly relevant to any game developers that are looking at this discussion. But I guess what you're saying is distribution also can be expanded even beyond the scope of what we're doing today.
So I'd like to correct you slightly there. I think for game developers also, if they are to partner with a product like GameStop, then it's GameStop's responsibility as to what our entry points for distribution are. The developer signs up with GameStop, and then GameStop is the one that takes our platform inside all of these products. So if you were to look at Amazon, for example, they have a section called Fun Zone within their product,
Yeah,
which
they
has
do.
casual games, right? So it has games like Bubble Shooter and Archery and the others which we power, which their users play. And trust me, we are live inside about 1800 products. Most of the guys who use games inside non-gaming products see an average time spent increase of up to 40%. up to 40%. So if somebody was spending 10 minutes on Hindustan Times, after Hindustan Times would add our product, the users would start spending 14 minutes on their product if they discover games, right? And this is hopefully a non-gamer that we're able to convert to a casual gamer, keep with us on the platform, and then hopefully graduate with them as they become more mature users, right? So we are not thinking about this as a 3-month process. Once the user stumbles upon GameStop inside any other product, and if we do a bad job at keeping the product inside our with the product, then the user is gone. Probably he's not going to come back to GameStop. But if you are able to create a good experience for a user, not only are we not spending money to acquire that user, but we are also enriching engagement inside a non-gaming product and paying them from our the share of the revenue that we are earning. So I think that is, because you mentioned what could be one of those new things that we add to this conference. If there are non-gaming products, I know that this conference is unlikely to have non-gaming products, but if there are non-gaming products, I would vouch that they should add a gaming section. Think of adding gaming as a feature within your product, and if you turn to guys like us, we usually do a good job there.
Absolutely. So, Kamal, what do you think in terms of what Gaurav was just mentioning? Expanding reach, reducing your customer acquisition cost, and maybe adding value to a non-gaming product by sort of gamifying that digital product itself. Has this been done by Riot or anybody that you know in any other markets, except for maybe some of the other game destinations from the times of flash gaming, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's very fundamental, like Gaurav clearly said, right? So everybody is a gamer. You just haven't found your game, and we help you find your game, right? I think that is what GameStop does, which basically means that that we will find the game which is right for you, no matter where you are, right? You might be on a newspaper, you might be doing maybe on a commerce side, maybe you are on a stock trading side. Don't worry, I mean, we'll find a game for you, and trust us. So this is, I think, what the value proposition is. And as far as it's very fundamental, right? So even for us as esports, why do we do esports? It's not because just that the game is game is competitive, but you have to understand that that esports also means that we are able to engage with a set of crowd who are maybe have played the game but are not playing it anymore, but they're still interested in watching the game being played competitively, right?
It's like I don't play cricket anymore, but I still watch IPL.
Exactly. And this is where I think the whole, like I said, the pyramid, right? So whatever that we have discussed, still we have to make sure that we are able to generate enough of this base of people who are playing games, enjoying games, and are discovering this competitive nature of games, right? Like, for example, for us at Riot, when we look at esports for League of Legends, we want it to be a multi-generational game, right? Which basically means that in 5 years from now, when the World Championships for League of Legends is happening, I would like to take my son to the venue and watch it with him, right? Because I played League.
Franchises, a bit like the
Exactly.
franchises.
Exactly.
Watching the same movies for generations to come.
Yes, exactly.
You've had Jungle Book back then, you've had Jungle Book 10 years back, and now you've got Jungle Book once more again. It's
Absolutely.
just live action.
Absolutely. And it doesn't happen overnight, right? So cricket took 60 years after, we finally were able to play independent of our colonial rulers. Now we are at a stage where we are able to go and enjoy the sport on its own as individuals, right? Or even and make it a family tradition of watching somebody play cricket, right? And I think that's the same problem statement that Gaurav mentioned it, right? Saying there are 1.3 billion people out there, and there's no reason why there won't be a game where every 90% of that 1.3 billion people, of course I'm excluding children who are not allowed to access mobile phones, play games, right? Just need to find the right game and get this.
Often they do manage to access them.
Correct. And get them to the habit of experiencing content, games, experiencing the competitive nature of games. Plus, Divyajit said, maybe we can enable them to stream their own gameplay as well. So finally, we might be at a stage where we will definitely see products coming up which are enabling way more esports, like the way that we see that IPL does for cricket, right? And this would be my thought. And that's the same philosophy that we have with Riot as well. So everything has to start. 10 years back, League of Legends also started out as a game which was played by 100 people. Now the number is in millions, but there is no reason why there cannot be local success stories from India, and more power to games, platforms like MPL and WinZop, which can help build up the ecosystem, get people to game as a habit, get them to stream their games as habit, and of course if they can also make a little bit of monetization on the sides, that is also fantastic, and it also helps the ecosystem. And this is what we believe will eventually lead us to be a much more mature market for all sorts of esports to exist.
All right, I think we are just in time, and our host is back. Do we have a couple of questions? Do we?
Yes, we do have questions, but I don't think there's much time to take those questions. I'm really very sorry for this.
Yeah,
Thank you to all of you.
last questions, you can come to us offline on any of the
Yes.
platforms. Sure, you can find us on LinkedIn or any other platforms. Thank you so much for your time and your contribution, Sukamal, Gaurav, Dibujyoti, and thank you, ma'am. Thank you, IMA, for organizing this and having us here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you to all of you. Dear delegates, thanks for joining in. I'm sure Gato 2020 must have left you with many insightful learnings. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you to all our partners and members. Good night.
Good night.